Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Winecast. I did mean to do some casting on an Italian region or grape this week, but, the best laid plans of mice and men, etc., etc. So it's just across the western Mediterranean to Spain for a really interesting and delicious variety that could use some attention, Verdejo. Before I get started, though, I want to give a shout out to a subscriber of mine here in Seattle, Brent, who's over on the wine team at Total Wine and More in Interbay here in town, who I was fortunate enough to meet and who tipped me off to a couple of great wines that I otherwise would have missed. So if you're in Seattle and looking for some tips on something interesting to drink, there's a great resource for you. I actually always enjoy meeting subscribers and fans, so if you're ever in the greater Seattle area, please feel free to reach out. Despite my somewhat secretive online persona, I'm really a people person. So now on to Verdejo. If you do some of your own research on this grape, you'll hear conflicting accounts about its place of origin, with some sources claiming that it's indigenous to north-central Spain, while others claiming that it's native to North Africa, specifically to what today would be Algeria, and that it made its way to Spain thanks to Mozarabs, or Arabic-speaking Christians, during the period of Muslim control of the Iberian Peninsula in the Middle Ages. Though both of these narratives are out there, I think the weight of the evidence definitely tips the scale toward one of them, and I'll get to that in a moment, but whichever one it turns out to be, the grape definitely shows up on the scene in central Spain sometime around the 11th or 12th century. Verdejo hasn't strayed far from the middle of the Iberian Peninsula, and today it's most widely planted in order of descending land under vine in the autonomous communities of Castilla y León, Extremadura, and Castilla-La Mancha. As of 2010, there were about 16,500 hectares, or about 40,000 acres, under vine in Spain, with just a few plantings elsewhere in the world, but that's still enough to make Verdejo the world's 46th most planted variety. Thanks to DNA analysis, Verdejo's heritage has been worked out with some confidence, and it's now known that it was the result of a probably accidental cross between the white grape Sauvignon, also known as Traminer, that I've covered elsewhere, and another white grape, Castellana Blanca, that's also the parent of a number of native Spanish grapes. Sauvignon and Castellana Blanca are also both the parents of Godello, a white variety important to production in northwest or green Spain, giving that grape and Verdejo a full sibling relationship. And, as I covered in the cast on Sauvignon Blanc, thanks to Sauvignon's role, along with a currently unknown variety as a parent of Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, and the red grape Trousseau, Verdejo has what might be called a half-sibling relationship to these three grapes. The fact that one of Verdejo's parents, Castellana Blanca, is a local grape, along with the fact that both parents were involved in the origin of another local grape, Godello, suggests strongly that Verdejo's origins are in Spain, probably not far from where it's most widely planted now in Castilla y León, and not in North Africa, though you will hear that claim. That said, if I missed any key evidence for an origin outside of Spain, let me know in the comments. So much for the history and heritage, but how do wines made from this grape actually present? Well, unsurprisingly perhaps for a grape related to Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin Blanc, Verdejo is a highly aromatic grape with a nose that foregrounds what might be called green aromas. Fittingly, since the name of the grape is related to the word verde, the Spanish word for green. The nose can be redolent of honeydew or Crenshaw melon, as well as lime and lime pith, along with more savory notes of celery seed and fennel that show up especially in older examples, along with cucumber in younger wines. You may also find notes of peach as well as a more general citrus quality that lingers on the nose. The acidity on wines made from Verdejo will tend toward the high end of medium and beyond, as will the body, which is usually described as rich and weighty. The palate will have a lot of the same things going on that the nose does, along with a pleasant bitterness that is sometimes identified with the descriptor bitter almond, and that will deepen and smooth out with age. Verdejos are usually considered age-worthy, with quality examples benefiting from between 5 to 10 years of aging and maybe beyond, in the case of exceptional bottlings, though you won't hurt yourself to drink a Verdejo young, and most are made to be drunk within a couple of years of bottling. Their high acid and rich, often savory aroma and palate character make them fantastic food wines that do especially well with heavier white meats or with fried foods, especially seafood with complex and assertive seasonings, like this phenomenal seafood and chips combo served with a garlic mayonnaise and mango chutney that I had the good fortune to try along with a great Verdejo in Barcelona. Finally, no discussion of Verdejo can be complete without referencing the Spanish DO with which it's most closely associated, and that produces what most take to be its benchmark for quality expression, the Rueda DO. Granted DO status in 1980, this appellation also produces varietal Sauvignon Blanc, as well as red wines based on Tempranillo and other grapes that can be covered in a dedicated cast. When it comes to Verdejo-driven wines, the contemporary or modern style is to make them as fresh, young wines that can be consumed soon after bottling, though oak-aged and age-worthy bottlings are a thing. A bottle labeled with just the Rueda designation will be 50% Verdejo at minimum and can include Sauvignon Blanc, Viura, and Palomino Fino, though Palomino is being phased out as a grape for this DO. The real hookup, though, is to look for wines designated as varietal Verdejo or Rueda Verdejo, where there must be at least 85% Verdejo in the bottle, with many producers who apply for this designation opting to make a 100% varietal wine. There's also a sparkling expression, espumoso in Spanish, that allows the sweeter, drier, demi-sec versions to be made with as little as 50% of our grape, while requiring at least 85% for the brutes or brut natures. That's the modern style of wines from Rueda, a style that got going in the 1970s when quality-minded producers from elsewhere in Spain, particularly Rioja, began investing in the region and moving its wines in a more accessible and consumer-friendly direction. But for centuries prior to that, Ruedas were made in a fortified and highly oxidative style called Dorado, or golden, owing to its deep yellow color, that's still available and worth checking out. Traditionally driven by either Verdejo or Palomino Fino, these wines are aged for a minimum of 4 years before release, the last 2 of which have to be in oak. And the wines must carry a minimum 15% alcohol by volume. The oxidative character of Dorados is achieved by aging in an intensely hot and oxidative environment, usually in glass demijohns like you see pictured on the right, that can be left out of doors and exposed to wide fluctuations in temperatures. So what should you try when it comes to Verdejo? Well, as with most less widely planted varieties, the options are somewhat limited and straightforward. Start with Verdejos from Rueda, with your best bet for both quality and age-worthiness as well as for experiencing varietal character being wines with the Rueda Verdejo designation. Dorados can be hard to find outside of Spain, but try them if you can and expect a wine with a character that's often compared to Finos sherry, but that might remind you of the oxidatively aged Sauvignons of the Jura. Once you've sampled some Ruedas, have a look at Verdejo-driven Vinos de la Tierra, or IGP level wines from Castilla y León and elsewhere in Spain where Verdejo is planted widely. Quality can be hit or miss here and will require some research or blind faith on your part, but there are some interesting expressions of this grape, often blended, coming out of these appellations. How about outside of Spain? There really isn't much out there, with probably the largest number of plantings currently in Australia, followed by the US. And we're talking limited acreage and bottlings. But if you come across any, check them out and please let me know what your thoughts were in the comments. Thanks for joining me for another Winecast. Though Verdejo is widely planted enough to make the list of top 50 varieties on the planet, I don't think it's getting the attention it deserves, and I hope this cast piqued your interest. If it did, or if you found it otherwise helpful and enjoyable, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and please feel free to leave a question, comment, or suggestion. I'm your host, The Unknown Winecaster, and I'm out. Enjoy the grape, but always enjoy it responsibly.